It's okay. Let's have an update about the potential about what's going to go on in the city's plan response.
I need you to read this first before you start.
Oh, okay.
Please.
We have our emergency manager.
Okay, let me read this. I got to do this. Amanda, I got it. Yes, I got to do it. I am going to be compliant. Honorable members of City Council, in accordance with Virginia Beach City Code 2-21, and by the authority invested in me as mayor of the city of Virginia Beach, I hereby call for a special formal session of the Virginia Beach City Council, Tuesday, September 27th, at the conclusion of the regular scheduled meeting. City Council Conference Room, Building 1, City Hall, 2nd floor, 2401 Courthouse Drive. The purpose of the special session will be allowed to convene for the following closed session for the following reasons. Prospective business or industries, Project Fox, public contract, Project Sand and 35th Street, legal matters, ICRB, and personnel matters, council appointments, boards, commissions, committees, authorities, agencies, and appointees. And at the conclusion of the session, the council will reconvene for purposes of certifying the closed session. Okay, we're good?
No.
Okay. Right. Okay.
So Mayor, at this time, our emergency manager, Daniel Projan, will provide an update to council on how things look for this weekend as it relates to the hurricane.
Good afternoon.
Hey, welcome.
Hello. Good afternoon. Thank you for having me real quick. I know when the word hurricane or tropical storm is in the news, we all want to pay attention. So here to provide a quick update to you, we are monitoring Hurricane Ian's track. We know that based on current forecasts, it's predicted to make landfall in Florida around Wednesday night into Thursday morning as a Cat 2. And then as soon as it makes landfall, it's predicted at this time to quickly dissipate and move over central Georgia. As a result, what we're looking at is a track going westward, northwestward inland, and kind of staying away from our area. We could see some outer bands from Hurricane Ian's remnants impact our area Friday into the weekend, but more so what we're paying attention to is a coastal low that's going to come down and just bring some rain and cold, nasty weather to our area. So at this time, based on what we're seeing, we are kind of leaning forward as we always do. We're making preparations and having internal conversations, but we know that it's still a couple days out, so we're still kind of waiting for the forecast to firm up a bit. The city is prepared to deal with anything as it comes.
Good. I think, cause of concern is obviously events scheduled at the oceanfront, one of which is, the Neptune activities and everything. But once again, I think, we're just going to have to keep an eye on this, and public safety is going to be paramount. Mr. Dehaney, other comments?
I think that's about it. If the council doesn't have any other questions for
any questions? Okay, that was an update. Thank you. Okay, on to City Council briefings, and how about the Virginia Museum of Contemporary Art MoCA Strategic Partner Update with Gary Ryan. Hey, Gary, how you doing?
Thanks, Mayor. How are you?
Good.
And hello, City Council. Thank you so much for having us here. Love your new digs. These are awesome. The last time I actually presented to this session, and this is my third time officially presenting to you, was in May of 21, and you were in your old council building. And that's when I first updated you on our new strategic plan and all the thinking we had done about how we wanted to move forward. And I'm here to share some of the good news about how we're moving in that direction and our accomplishments. My second meeting with you was in May of in April of 2021, where I asked you for $300,000 in incremental funds to support the Myelin Exhibition, which you then approved in May. And so I'm going to give you a little update on how all of that went. So first, I want to say thank you, because I'm hoping you will see, as we see, how well your investment in Virginia MoCA and the exhibition of Myelin did in terms of supporting the city. This is what the old front yard of Virginia Mocha used to look like. Part of the $300,000 that you granted us, $100,000 was used to improve the front lawn. We worked with SGA and Emily Archer in particular. She was a really wonderful partner in helping us determine how to make our front lawn as beautiful and as the work that would be inside our galleries with Myelin, so that the museum could have its best face on when we welcomed our record number of attendees. Just so you know, that $100,000 actually went into the pockets of Virginia Beach contractors who worked on all of the elements of this kind of multifaceted construction project, including Mackenzie Construction, WPL, Greensward, Hercules Fence, and I'm happy to say that they matched the city's investment in a 1-to-1 ratio. What you see there to your left is a sculpture that was made by high school students. The school systems in the area took the opportunity to launch their public art SOL with the Myelin Exhibition. And our team worked in the school system for about a year, working with the students at Churchland and Green Run and Maury and I forget where else, but we were in there teaching them all about what it was like to conceive of and execute a public sculpture. And this is a quote from Chris Buhner. You can read it for yourself, but we really hold dear the fact that we are considered such close partners with the schools system of Virginia Beach and also Hampton Roads more broadly. The other thing we did was we welcomed over 500 children from various school programs over the course of the summer. And this is a school group that was brought into the Myelin exhibitions from CTEC, and this is Wanda Steffen's response to that. The tour was aligned with our expectations as it applied to the students' curiosity and the will to want to know more. They shared their thinking as they were challenged with questions about the artifacts that they saw. So we're really thrilled to be kind of almost an extension program of the Virginia Beach public school system and for school systems across throughout the city of Virginia Beach. Just so you know, in terms of attendance, the last time I presented to you, I was talking about how excited we were to have an exhibition that was generating 5,000 exhibition attendees. Well, I'm happy to report that Myelin actually generated close to 15,000. We exceeded our expectations by 17%. And you can see both Summer of Women, which is the purple line below Myelin, those are our summer exhibitions. And you can see that the museum has a lot of impact during the summer, and so we got a lot of the tourist trade as well. But Myelin was beyond our wildest dreams. In fact, if you look at the distribution of our attendees from across the country, they came from all over. 40% came from Virginia Beach, 32% from the rest of Virginia, and 26% from out of state. So not only did you invest in $100,000 for our front lawn, but the remainder of that grant went to supporting our marketing outreach efforts that we worked closely with CVB and worked with some of their vendors to deploy those dollars as effectively as we could in line with what the city knew best about their visitorship. And as I mentioned, we were almost 20% above goal. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit to the state of Virginia. Like I said, 32% of our visitors came from the rest of the Commonwealth. And then that's the map on the left and to the right. You can see that we really pulled all of Hampton Roads in. So again, if we're starting to think about Virginia Mocha as not only an amenity for the people who live in Virginia Beach, but also an attraction for for citizens of our sister cities and the broader Commonwealth, we're happy to report that we worked very well. And furthermore, I wanted to let you know kind of what the breakdown of our Virginia Beach visitors were. One of the things that, we weren't sure, the good news is that we've started collecting audience data. One of the silver linings of COVID is that people have become very familiar with giving you personal data, particularly zip codes. When they register, we capture zip code information with everyone who walks in. So now we know that of the Virginia Beach visitors, 40% came from the North End or Great Neck, 20% from Kempsville, 13% from Rose Hall and Kings Grant, 12% from Pungo, 10% from Bayside, and 5% for Green Run. So we were thrilled to have our intuition confirmed by the numbers that we actually serve the entire city and not just isolated numbers, isolated neighborhoods. Furthermore, when you look at our youth tours, what's interesting is the military really takes advantage of Virginia Mocha. A number of summer camps that are based in children's programs on military bases actually utilize the museum. A third of the youth were were affiliated with some type of military-based children's program, and the other 70% were non-military. And you can see that again, they were representative of all of the neighborhoods, or a large majority of the neighborhoods that make up the entirety of the city. This is a little bit more about how the money that you gave us to spend in advertising was spent. You'll see that we placed the bulk of our advertising in digital efforts, which is something that the CVB is very capable with, and we actually worked closely with their digital agency, Orange 142, who does all the digital buying for the CVB. And you'll see that it proved out that almost 2 to 1, more than 2 to 1, heard of the Myelin Exhibition through online advertising. The next was word of mouth, and we're so pleased to see that word of mouth was such a powerful driver. What's interesting is third down the list was the fact that people either drive or walk by. One of the things that we wrestle with is kind of the visibility of the museum and where it sits now. But the good news is that our new signage is really bearing fruit, and that the third most popular way people found out about the exhibition or about the museum itself was by driving or walking through. So you can see how we spent our media. And as I said in the earlier presentations, I've given to you that is a dollar spent on Virginia Mocha is a dollar spent on Virginia Beach. And this is how we helped market Virginia Beach across the country and around, and specifically in this neighborhood. So what does this mean over the long term? It means that Virginia Mocha is on an incredible growth trajectory. If you look at our attendance over the past 10 to 12 years, we have a compounded annual growth rate in attendance of close to 7%. We have hit highs that have not been experienced since we put the work of Andy Warhol on view a long time ago in FY23. And you can also see that the investment in our digital efforts have paid off on our social media platforms as well, with close to 2.4 million people being reached by Facebook, and we have growth all the way around that. We grew 12% in Facebook, we grew 17% with our Instagram followers, and our website had almost 100% growth, over 70% growth in terms of our unique visitors. So how does this translate into our operational budget? Well, it translates quite well. This, again, is a historical view looking back over the various sources of funding, and I'm happy to report that individual revenue is actually the bright blue bar, and that is individuals who contributed to the museum, and you can see that over the past years, it's grown almost 21%. So individuals are really stepping up to match and exceed what the city is investing in the museum. In fact, for the Myelin Exhibition in particular, there was a 2-to-1 match relative to the city's investment and to what we were able to generate from individuals and corporations. You'll also see municipal revenue has generously increased, although last year it took a little bit of a step. This year it took a little bit of a step back of where we were during the year of Myelin, but we're very pleased and thankful for the work that for the monies that you have approved to invest in the museum this year. I just want to review for you very quickly what's in the FY22-23 budget in terms of city investment. From the general fund, we're getting about $115,000 to support our exhibition program, $135,000 to support our education program. And from TIP, we continue to receive money to support marketing and the Boardwalk Art Show. This, of course, does not include the lease commitments, nor does it reference the fact that next year we're pleased that we will be moving forward with implementing the CIP for work on the outside of the building, the $2.5 million CIP. And Emily and I have a meeting on the books with Public Works to get that planning underway. I just wanted to give you a sense of how that money's being deployed this year. That's Family Fest on the left, which was hosted during Myelin. We had close to 400 people in the building thinking about our climate and our Chesapeake Bay and all the things that Myelin holds so dear and illustrates so beautifully in her work, as well as an art camp, which was sold out. One of the other programs that we launched in coordination with Myelin is that we hosted 4 artists in residence during the duration of the exhibition. All of them were from this area. That's Spencer Tinkham, right under the words artist in residence, who came and spoke to our board and talked about how meaningful it was to have this type of support as a young, an emerging artist. And so we're going to be able to continue that moving forward. And the good news is not too far from now, October 21st, we're going to be hosting the Boardwalk Art Show. It's now in its 66th year. There was a little trepidation last year when we moved it to October. And after the fact, the postmortem showed that everyone was pleased, artists, attendees, sponsors. And so this year, what we're seeing is that we actually have 20% growth in artists that have signed up and agreed to come and put their work on the boardwalk. One of the new things we brought to the Boardwalk Art Show last year is we invited local college and university art programs to come free of charge to put their programs on the boardwalk and show the work of their students or talk about the types of classes they have available to people who are walking by. We'll also continue to host our VIP tent in Neptune Park and a really dynamic family park in 24th Street Park, again, where we reach out to community partners like the aquarium, hurrah players, and they help us program and celebrate all the creativity that's happening in Virginia Beach. And finally, for the 3rd year, the Virginia Museum of Fine Art will bring their museum truck and park it on the grass next to 31st Street Park and host their museum there. And it's one of the things they're really proud of. In fact, they fundraise down here around the fact that their truck is down here. What I want to remind you and ask you to keep an eye out is that you should be very shortly receiving invitations to our kickoff party, which is Thursday, October 20th at the Hilton Sky Bar, and we'd love to see you there. So before we get to the Boardwalk Art Show in just a couple of weeks, we're going to be opening up our suite of fall exhibitions. They run from October 7th through February 5th, and they are More Than Shelter, which is the work that we have commissioned by local artists to help dimensionalize a key human need, which is shelter. You might remember we did an exhibition entitled Nourish, where we focused on food, which is also a key, a basic human need. And so in these exhibitions, we pair local organizations that care about these issues, advocate for these issues, explore these issues with artists to help demystify or socialize kind of the work that's being done. And it was incredibly impactful when we went through it with Nourish a year or so ago, and we're going into our 2nd phase of that type of exhibition in October, and it's all around the idea of shelter and housing, and I'll share with you some of those partnerships. We're also in the 2nd year of Made in VA, which is actually the 26th year of our juried exhibition of work by artists living and working in Virginia. This year, we received submissions from 525 artists, which was 100 more, so 25% more than we had the year before, which was 25% more than we had the year before. This thing is blowing up. It's becoming an incredible force. We're seeing artists we'd never seen before. We're continuing to see faculty from VCU and William & Mary and really all the key art programs across the Commonwealth. And our juror is from the Museum of Contemporary Art in Chicago, which is one of the things we do is we expose the art talent of our area to the broader national art scene. And she was just so impressed with the work she saw and had a really hard time choosing 29 artists out of the 525. In the spring, in March, we're going to open a couple of exhibitions. One is entitled Kara Walker, Cut to the Quick. And as part of that presentation of Kara Walker's work, we are going to be having Harvard Law professor and Monticello trustee Annette Gordon-Reed come and speak to us. We're hosting her as our keynote speaker to talk about how Virginia and the legacy of slavery come together. We'll also be hosting the work of LaToya Hobbs, who is an area artist that works out of Baltimore, and we'll continue with our Artist in Residence program. The other thing that's very, there's a typo. The other thing that's really exciting is that we've continued to grow our partnership with the Virginia Museum of Fine Art, and we are going to be doing a sculpture program on our grounds with their work. This is just a list. You can look at it at your leisure of the type of community, the degree to which we reach out to the community to leverage the knowledge and expertise and influence, since we work typically with very small marketing budgets. Galvanizing grassroots support for what's happening on the museum and on the museum grounds is super important. So you can see it's a wide range of partnerships that we're engaged in, both for this round of exhibitions as well as the Kara Walker exhibition coming in the spring. There are a lot of other irons that we have in the fire. In fact, we've contracted with the Dragas Center for Economic Analysis at Old Dominion. They're about halfway through conducting an economic impact study of the Virginia MoCA's impact on the Hampton Roads region, with a specific lens on Virginia Beach. And there's a high likelihood, with results coming in January of 2023, that we will actually be a chapter in their presentation of the state of the region. We're also participating in the Hampton Roads Community Foundation Racial Equity Assessment Program. We were one of 3 nonprofits out of the 15 or 20 or so that applied that was chosen to actually host this pilot program. This evening, I'm sure as many of you know, the Southampton Roads Bar Association and the Hampton Roads Community Action Program is holding a nonpartisan meet and greet at Virginia MoCA. We're also awaiting notification of a $100,000 FEMA grant. Just to reiterate that through COVID and with all grant opportunities, we chase all of them down to try to enhance our operations. And this is specifically to bolster the security around the building. And finally, as many of you are aware, we're in our reaccreditation phase, and that has kicked off. Well, it will kick off in earnest once we open up the shows, because what's required of us for reaccreditation is that we undergo a self-study that's about 12 months long and very intensive. And it's that self-study that we turn into the American Association of Museums. They review it and they come for a site visit. So in conclusion, I just wanted to say that I hope it's evident to you all that we're incredibly committed to continuing to distinguish Virginia Beach in the minds of not only the people who live here, but also the people who visit us, by being good stewards of the resources that not only you grant us, but also individuals and corporations put in our care to make sure that we can bring the most compelling, locally relevant and nationally resonant contemporary art to Virginia MoCA and to the city of Virginia Beach. So again, I just wanted to say thank you so much for your time, and thank you so much for your support. And we're very much looking forward to working with you in the city manager's office as we craft the budget for next year.
Okay, Linwood and then Delcino.
Thank you, Mayor. Gary, great presentation. Would you be kind enough to introduce members of your board?
Absolutely. That I knew I forgot something so much, Councilman Branch. I'd love our board to stand. And I'm going to go left to right. Nicole Nadahorsky is our board chair. Connie McKenzie is our upcoming board chair. Vivian Montano is a recent addition to our board of trustees. John Katzius is a board of trustee member. Bruce Berlin is also a board of trustee member. Scott Duncan is our former board chair, and he was the one who helped shepherd through a lot of the strategic thinking that we brought to you a couple of years ago. And Paul Battaglia is also on our board and on our executive committee. So I just want to say thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you for being here.
Gary.
Thank you.
I would just say that having been involved in the Sandler Center Foundation, when you have a committed and enthusiastic board, it makes all the difference in the world. And I've had the occasion to meet with these folks a couple of times, and we have that here with MoCA. And I'm very much looking forward to working with you all on the future of MoCA and make it better and bigger and everything else. So look forward to that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you,
so much.
Delfino, and then Michael, then Guy.
Great presentation.
Thank you.
Appreciate all the hard work. Just wondering if you captured any data. I know you're big on data in terms of, I know Mr. Branch is going to like this question, room nights.
Actually, we had one of the, in our surveys, we determined that about a quarter of the attendees that come through our building are staying in a hotel.
Yeah.
So it's significant.
Yeah, I just wanted that to be on the record. And any demographic data that you captured, not beyond just the zip codes?
You know what? We are still trying to figure out how to do that well.
Okay.
And so we're relying on zip codes right now to help us to indicate that. But again, that's an emerging field, and we're working actually with our board on trying to refine those demographic measures and how we capture them.
And kudos on overshooting your goal. I mean,
Thank you very
almost
much.
16,000 people. Any feedback from any of those individuals? I know it was the quality of the exhibit certainly was a big draw, but in addition to the marketing, did you get feedback from any of the visitors in terms of, particularly I saw some from San Francisco, which is one of my favorite cities, that you had visitors from from the West Coast. Did you get any feedback from any of those?
Well, I think Myelin, I mean, we couldn't have had her
She's a
in
huge
our
star,
in our space at a time when she had absolutely the most exposure in her career. She had just been awarded by the New York Times one of the best exhibitions. She went on to be chosen by National Geographic as one of the Explorers of the Year. She was named as Time's 100 Innovators. She's named by the Wall Street Journal as one of their innovators, and then as Time's Top 100. And then on top of that, just about a month before the exhibition closed, it was made known that she was going to be designing a sculptural water element for President Obama's library in Chicago. So we happened to be very fortunate to align well with the fact that one of the most important and most highly recognized contemporary artists was actually having her only solo exhibition at Virginia MoCA in Virginia Beach.
I think that's important for the public to know.
Yes.
The quality of the exhibit.
And that's what one of our intentions is that every 18 to 24 months, part of our strategic plan is to have a gateway exhibition of that caliber. And Kara Walker is the next exhibition, and then after that, we will bring another exhibition suite that's really about the environment again by two leading environmental artists, Mark Dion and Alexis Rockman.
Thank you.
Okay, Michael, then Guy.
Ms. Ryan, thank you very much for your presentation, and I want to join everyone really in welcoming your board and supporters here. It's really great to see you again, and thank you for making time to be here. I think what your presentation demonstrated is something that many of us already know, and I hope this gives the broader community a chance to learn about the remarkable things that are happening at MoCA and how many people you're serving through your exhibitions you present that are evocative and informative and challenging at times, and also the programs that you do, which are accessible and fun and educational for young people through every age, every walk of life, and every step of life. And I agree with the assertions you made about that you have been really remarkable and great stewards of city resources in terms of making sure that your programs and exhibitions are accessible to everyone, not just from Virginia Beach, but across the region and even across the country and the globe. But one statistic that I really want to focus on for this discussion is the distribution around Virginia Beach. Because it's true that you serve a lot of the people who are within your immediate proximity, and that's normal. I think every museum, every institution does that. But I think it's also very interesting that 60% of your visitors from Virginia Beach come from other parts of the city, which really shows us that your efforts are working and that people from across our community feel welcome and comfortable and invited to enjoy all the information that you present. I think MoCA is a kind of a jewel in our Virginia Beach community. And I think what you alluded to here today is that we have a lot of opportunity and potential to work together in a collaborative fashion to even create more opportunities and even make that jewel even shine brighter than it already does. And I think that's a lot of really exciting potential around that. And I look forward to being a supporter of those conversations as we move forward. And I want to make, just to add, build on what Mr. Branch said previously, not only do you have a wonderful board and group of volunteers, supporters, and donors, but you have a great staff too. And I really want to make sure that we take the time to offer my appreciation for your entire team who produces those, who hangs the art, who works with the young people who come in, both paid and volunteer on your staff side. So thank you very much for that. And you gave us a great presentation. It's a lot to look forward to, and I look forward to being there with you every step of the way. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilman Berlucci. One of the things I just wanted to mention was that we continue to offer free admission. And I think that is, in concert with what the Chrysler is doing as well, and many museums across the country are doing. And that is underwritten right now by the Good Family Foundation. And we think removing barriers to entry and admission price being one of them is really important to ensuring access for all.
And Mayor, could I just, if you don't mind, I'd just like to build on that in response. Free admission is wonderful, and it's a huge barrier removed. But I think what your numbers demonstrate is that you're even doing beyond that. You're even doing beyond that, because free admission is one thing, but getting people to come to the door is quite another. And I think what you're showing is that your efforts are paying off in both respects. Removing that barrier, but also removing the barriers that exist and getting people to the door is just as big. And so it's a great effort, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Guy.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to express, as my term on council nears an end, how much, Gary, I appreciate all you've done for the city. I take my hat off to your board and staff too, but I want to personally direct praise to Gary. I've seen you from sort of your earliest days and how far we have come and you have come in this. You've been an inspirational and effective leader of MoCA and a pillar of our community, both from bringing a cultural atomic energy to our community and in economic development as well. And your sensitivity to both those areas is really what makes you such a good leader. So just a personal thank you for that, and good luck. I'll look forward to continuing to work with you.
Well, I'll see you in the galleries.
Yes, indeed.
Hey, anyone else? All right, thanks,
Thank you
Gary.
so much.
You did great work. We have a city that a lot of stuff to do. Go. Good. Mrs. Dehaney.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, at this time, Ruth Hill, our Director of Housing and Neighborhood Preservation, will give a presentation on affordable housing. This stems from a conversation council had with us in a previous meeting in September. What appropriate next steps are for developing an affordable housing strategy.
Welcome.
Well, good afternoon, and thank you, Mayor Dyer and Vice Mayor Wilson and council members. I appreciate this opportunity to provide you with a review of the 2016 housing study completed by Virginia Tech, as well as best practices from several communities that have implemented the affordable housing strategy. So I have with me Sharon Schoaf. She is the Housing Development Program Coordinator who's worked with Mel Jones from Virginia Tech. And she's here as the subject matter expert, should we have any questions at the end, if we should need her. She actually updated the data in 2019, and that can be found on our website. So with your permission and your insights and your thoughts, the goal is to re-engage Virginia Tech, who already understands our community, to update the study with 2021 data. We will look and assess what the Virginia Beach is currently doing and then tweak or develop new recommendations. The direction, of course, will depend on your guidance, but specifically your individual input. The goal is that Virginia Tech will come in and have individual meetings with each of you to ask you how you as council members feel. And then we'll have community input and stakeholder concerns as well. Anecdotally, as you all probably know, based on clients that we are serving in the Department of Housing, incomes have decreased while increase in rents have soared. We have seen, in addition, housing units that are in high demand for rental and home ownership, and many have been pushed out of actually living in the Virginia Beach market completely. So that's a great concern. So the data that this study is the 2016 study is therefore obsolete, and based on the current post-pandemic reality, we believe that a new study will provide us the information that we need to create a meaningful strategy. So I wanted to steal a quote by Mayor Dyer. I often hear you say that the goal, of course, is to have a city where everyone can work, live, and play here in Virginia Beach. So this is just a little bit about the history of the goals of what was taking place in 2016. What is bolded there is that under DHMP, we were working on revitalizing neighborhoods in the plan for the future. Those goals did change later on, and we'll talk about that in a few moments. So this study, what it did, and it was conducted, like I said, by Virginia Tech and CZB, what it did was it provided information on the city's household demographics, the housing stock, homeownership, and rental rates. It also looked at neighborhood characteristics and other issues. It revealed trends, housing needs, and opportunities for achieving the city's goals for affordability and the preservation and enhancement of our existing housing. We did have community and stakeholder engagement opportunities during that event, and we will do that again in the repeat if we move forward. So Virginia Tech, this presentation of the study that, as we already indicated, is already old, was presented to Kids Council on January 27, 2017. At that time, no council policy or action recommendations were made, but DHMP was supposed to move forward and put together next steps for a strategy. However, that did not happen, and one of the reasons that did not happen had to do with the fact that in October of 2016, as you all would remember, we had Hurricane Matthew. And with all that happened with Hurricane Matthew, DHMP staff was mobilized to actually work to rehouse those families. That process was very intense for multiple months and actually took as long as 18 months to get everybody rehoused. Additionally, the city switched to strategic goal teams, if you remember, in June 2017. And the Revitalized Neighborhoods was one of those strategic goal teams. Andy Friedman, the former director of housing, was actually the chair of that team. So actions just kind of became derailed because of the focus that shifted to flood mitigation. And then, of course, May 31st occurred. And then priorities just shifted because of what happened here, that trauma that happened to our city. March 2022, the pandemic hit, so no presentation of strategies was presented to council. However, the Housing Advisory Board has had a couple of presentations. The most recent one was in January of 2021, and so they have been kept up to speed on the strategies that DHMP have been doing. So the initial findings from this study were three things that were of import. The impact of millennials on the housing market was discussed in the study, And this was really about the demographics because of their impact on the market and the new demand of millennials now coming into the housing market. And how then could the city of Virginia Beach meet that need? As you know, there's vulnerabilities around the current city's housing stock because of the age. And then thirdly, the importance and the increase in the influence around the lower wage jobs in Virginia Beach, particularly as it represents the tourism employment community. So here is just a slide that talks about, and I have a couple of slides here that just are bringing in some of the cost burden that was seen in 2016. What I'd like to point out here is that in 2016, the fair market rent was $1,150, and currently it's $1,329. So you can already see that increase in what fair market rent here in our region is. While cost burden households with moderate and high incomes still may see it, they are much better able to pay the over 30% of their income for housing costs, unlike those that are severely cost burdened in the orange or cost burdened households in the blue. Also, we wanted to point out the number of housing units that are affordable to renters and owners with income less than 80% AMI. And this data, of course, is 2014. You can see that there was a 27% decline in units affordable to low-income houses, and then a 58% decline in owner-occupied and for-sale units affordable to housing. As you can imagine, this disparity is even greater now. I'd like to share with you that the current percent, 93.5 is 100% of AMI in 2022. 80% of that number for a household of 4 is 74.8, and 60% of the area median income is 56,100 for a same household of 4. So the study had some recommendations, and one of them, the first one, was about greenfield to rehab and infill, and then single family to multifamily. The goal here was, or the input here was, that we shouldn't, as the city, create housing in open space, but look at rehabbing and infilling our current older neighborhoods and maybe using other more suitable places. And from our perspective at the Department of Housing, there's some opportunity for infill maybe in shopping centers that are now vacant, that we could do that work. So then you go from low density to single use and higher density and mixed use. One of the important things is not only mixed income, but also mixed use when you're doing affordable development. And finally, dedicate some funds to address affordable housing strategies. We need to creatively, according to the study, preserve housing stocks that are currently affordable, look at the affordability challenges for the city's growing number of low-wage workers that I mentioned earlier, and then, of course, work on making sure that people in the aging units have the ability to maintain those units and keep them currently maintained. So to summarize, the previous report recommended the use of land more intensely to increase land values and revenue potential. It also talked about increasing values would encourage investment and generate revenues that could be used to fund affordable housing for future programs for households that are in need. So what are the tools that could be used? There are 3 tools that were discussed here. There is an incorrect word under Housing Trust Fund that should not say district. It should say designated or distinct. So we didn't want you to think that we expected, there was an expectation to districtly fund this. So I wanted to make that correction. I'm sorry that was missed until this morning. But the Housing Trust Fund and Land Bank and then Community Land Trust. If you want further information on these, we have lots of documentations we could forward to the council about how we could use this. One of the things I'd like to point out about the land trust is that if a land trust was used as an opportunity for creating affordable housing, the land trust would never change its use other than using it for affordable housing. It's in perpetuity, as it says. So I wanted to point that out. So the other thing that we wanted to share with you was best practices in other cities. So there were 3 cities that 3 council members asked for us to look at. One was Blacksburg, another was Fairfax, and the third was Charlotte. And then we also looked at Tampa because Tampa is similar to us in terms of population as well as being a coastal community. So you can see here that one of the things I wanted to point out about all of these communities was that ideally the housing expenses for meeting the low-income housing definition was that expenses should not exceed 30% of person's income. So that was across the board in all of the communities. This document, these slides, gives you the population, the households, those are total households, not affordable households, and then the total number of units. So you can see in Blacksburg, they created a home trust fund, and they really worked on how to improve low and moderate income households. They defined that, so everybody in the community knew what those were. In Fairfax, they actually bought land to keep for affordable housing units, and they did that in the Tyson's Corner area. Then in Tampa, one of the things that Tampa did, and as I reiterated, it is more similar to us in terms of demographics. They created a land trust and a housing trust fund to expand programming. They actually did some zoning changes. They evaluated their districts, and they revised their land development code and their comp plan. Around community engagement, what they did was they actually reached out to make sure that to their community their messaging was consistent, because their messaging around affordable housing was very inconsistent across their city, and they felt that it was important that they defined it and they were able to communicate that well to their community. If you look at Charlotte, Charlotte did an integrated approach to increase the capacity and impact, and they created a housing trust fund. One of the things I found unique was the way they supported family self-sufficiency, and so they actually were strengthening property owners' ability to develop their own ADUs. As you're probably familiar with the accessory dwelling unit concept, they offered tax relief to longtime property owners. They streamlined programs for homeowners that were living in single-family homes, and they continued to support workforce development programs in Charlotte. So what happened here in the city of Virginia Beach, as you all know, in November in 2021, last year, you appropriated funds for 4 different projects that will either increase or maintain the affordability here in the city, and I thought it was important for you to know about this. So JCOC, $500,000 was given with ARPA funds. That is a new project of affordable housing. 38 units of permanent supportive housing will be created with that project. VBCDC has 2 projects. One is a Scarborough Square. It is 16 units, townhouses that are scattered site. They are rehabbing those units, so that's preserving what we have there. They also have West Neck Village. They're doing 24, they're rehabbing the 2 buildings there. That's 24 beds for intermittent care for those with IDD, and so that will be preserved for affordability. Samaritan House is doing a new youth human trafficking shelter. That is a home that they purchased that they rehab. There will be 8 new shelter beds. That is not affordability, but it does meet the need of those very low that we need to be serving in our community. And then finally, Seton Youth is new construction. They are actually creating just 4 extra beds. They will have a 14 beds for the boys and 12 beds for the girls in their youth shelter that they purchased a building, and they will demolish it and they will build new there. I did not put it on this slide, but this morning I was thinking about sharing with you again part of the process. It's not real, it's affordability, but it's not new units. You also gave my department $3.7 million for the expansion of emergency housing vouchers, which will be 65 vouchers for persons coming out of homeless services, and it is short-term subsidy. It's a 3-year program, and so we're really looking forward to having those additional vouchers in the homeless services program. So we thought we'd share with you what's currently happening in the city of Virginia Beach. So we currently have 41 developments that 31 of them are LIHTC, 5 are funded with HUD dollars, and then 5 have other funding in them. A total of 4854 units and 4337 are affordable units, which is really great that we have that many. Under development are 4 different LIHTC projects. One is with Franklin Johnston Group. It's 925 apartments. 100% of them are affordable, and they're 60% AMI. Arbors at Birchwood is an elderly units that will be 150 total units, and 105 of those are affordable. The others are market rate. They're at 60% AMI. Tranquility, which is Seniors Unlimited, another nonprofit. This is Tranquility 2. They are adding 38 elderly units, and 100% of them are affordable to people 60% AMI. And then JCOC has those 38 units that we already talked about that is in development, and those are permanent supportive housing, and they also have project-based vouchers in them, so the city is actually giving them project-based vouchers for the people to use. So today, what we wanted to do is just to share with you where we are, and then to move forward, talk about that we received a draft from Virginia Tech to move forward and update the proposal for 2023. And the estimated cost is about $100,000. And this is a proposed scope and timeline for that project. So the first part, staff including our staff, but mostly Virginia Tech staff, would gather the data and the plans, policies, outcomes from our prior study, put all of that together, and then update all the data. In March and May, they would conduct interviews individually, as I said before, with each of you city council members or the new currently elected council members. They will conduct expert stakeholder focus groups that will include realtors, lenders, builders and developers, housing service providers, the businesses, particularly the resort area, contingency town center, and then large employers, and then refine and add to the data analysis on council and stakeholder engagement. They will review the strategy, prioritize, and develop what that will look like moving forward. And then June to August, there will be a public meeting. The data analysis will be drafted, proposals and vetted recommendations will be presented here to council in August or before, potentially, for feedback and then further direction from council. So today we are seeking just your input on this study, the estimated costs, and then steps to move forward. So questions, comments for me?
Very important topic, John.
I would like, because I know when we were at the last advisory meeting, you remember the representative for the Johnson Group talked about all the data that they had.
Correct.
And I think it would be good before we enter in and consummate the proposal, that we let the industry that supplies all this stuff to look at the scope and proposal and give us some feedback and give staff some feedback. Are we scoping that out right? Because these are people in the business. And I was impressed by the comments that he made and insights that he had, because in the end, that's what we have to rely upon to deliver the product. So I think we would benefit from, at least I think the staff would benefit, Mr. City Manager, from having maybe a couple of reps from the industry take a look to make sure that we
really have, before you start collecting the data, are we really collecting the data and how it looks relative to what the private sector relies on how they set rates, how they build their standards? I think that would, something I think, that when I read the first report, that was fairly large, that was a good report, but there were some insights I thought that were the reality of the private market, which has radically changed. I remember he mentioned they were now, their criteria was 3.5 times the rent, and that people that had incomes of less than 51 were the people that were going to be in the near future being evicted, and those eviction rates were going to be going up. So I think we need to have that experience data set before we actually say, this is what we want Virginia Tech to go collect. I think we don't know what industry can offer and what their thoughts. Are we going to get the right information for the decision we want to make? That's my comment. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Guy, then Delcina, and then Barbara.
Thank you, Ruth, for your presentation. Slide 15, I believe it is. It doesn't show up on here, but I think it's 15. Is this data readily available in a schedule that identifies all 45 of these project developments and where they are and how many units they have and that?
Yes, staff has. We have access to get you the existing units. Under development, of course, is under development. There are different levels of development. Some are already.
Yeah, well, only 4 of those.
Yeah.
I'm really more interested in the existing. I've never seen a schedule of them. I'd really like to kind of know where they are and how many units are in each one and anything else that you think might be useful if you collect that kind of information in one place. And then the question I have is, if I can get it, can any citizen get that? Or is that, is that information that's
definitely
readily available to?
Sharon? He asked if all citizens could access the LIHTC, the 41 developments of affordable housing. I imagine, yes, of course, it's public.
Yeah, actually, we have, the planning department has a story map in preparation for their upcoming comprehensive plan update. And there's a housing section. And at our last housing advisory board meeting, I went through that whole housing story map, and there's actually a map of all those affordable units. So it's open, the public can access it right now. So I can also send out that link.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
When you click on it, it tells you if it's LIHTC, how many total units, how many are affordable. So it is public.
Okay, thanks so much.
Okay, Delcino and then Barbara.
Thank you for the report, and this is my passion here, and Mr. Moss. Couple questions. I certainly want to wait for the update on the report, and I agree with Mr. Moss. But at the same time, I think we can dual track this. We can see what's existing, but at the same time have them come in and start certainly with the community engagement piece. I think that's important as well. So I think we can do both. I don't think we have to do one before the other. And was looking at if there are any additional federal or state resources that can be leveraged with our local dollars so we can get a little bit more bang for our buck. I know you talked a little bit about HUD, but there are some other resources out there. And I know the study could probably reveal some of this, but are you readily aware of anything out there now that we could tap before we even do the study?
Well, I think a couple things. One is that there are a lot of resources that are federal, state, and some of those federal funds get passed through to our department for housing development. And we and a lot of developers and nonprofits have used those before. I think that's one thing that our study can address is those developments happen because a lot of those resources already exist, or there's new resources that come to light, like the ARPA funds that can be used. So that's something we can include in the next study if you're interested in that. What is available for housing development, and then what are gaps? What would help incentivize future development or preservation of housing units?
And one thing I certainly hope we consider too is that we don't concentrate it all in one area. And I know you're not doing that, but I know in some places it's all concentrated. And it's important that people feel they have options, whether they want to live in Kimpsville, the oceanfront, or Bayside. That it's not all concentrated in one area. So hopefully that will be a question that comes up and to prompt that sort of information from the stakeholders. I know we talk a lot about millennials, but seniors, folks that want to downsize, and maybe the income's going to change because you're not getting your full compensation. Make sure we're looking at that end of the spectrum a little bit more than the previous study, because I know they talked a lot about and I understand that that's the larger population base at that point, but seniors are a growing population as well. So we need to make sure we have something for them. Let's see, you mentioned something about, I think it was slide 10. I wanted to find out if they made these recommendations. Are we using any of these tools now on slide 10?
No, we're not.
The state has a housing trust fund, but the city does not. They were specifically talking about a city housing trust fund.
Okay, all right, great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Barbara.
Yes, you, on slide 9, you were talking about the housing study recommendations, and I was particularly looking at the greenfield to rehab and infill. 2 years, 3 years ago, we did start a look at this fact that we are having this conversion from some of these shopping centers to another use. And we did start a little study group. Aaron and I believe, were the council reps, and we had a beginning, but we were at that pandemic time when we weren't able to really get the groups together and so forth, and it kind of fizzled. But we had a good start. And I know planning gave us some really good recommendations, and with Carolyn Smith, we're going to miss her, had come up with some good steps and so forth. I've been thinking that now that we're really looking at this affordable housing issue, particularly, we might want to restart that process, because it did begin, and I think we were beginning to get some traction, particularly with the development community over what they might do. So if we could kind of look at where we were with that and not lose the beginning we had, maybe we can pick back up on it, because I think that we're seeing that. We're seeing this request for mixed use and multifamily and so forth, and when we are converting these infill or rehab parts. And we really need to make sure we've got the right processes in place to do that. So I certainly am volunteering to get back to work on that if we can.
Okay, Rosemary, and then John, and then Aaron.
I was happy to see you bringing in the shopping center, because I've thought for a very long time we should turn, especially some of these shopping centers that are on the decline, into mixed use. And there's so many good things can occur from that, because it can give the shop owners, store owners, perhaps some employees coming, and also business, that they can utilize the business there. And it's good to, because we are running out of land to sort of go up instead of, we just don't have much room to go out. And a lot of these shopping centers just, one story, and it would be a really great thing. And I don't know how we can sort of encourage the development community to go that route. And I imagine we'd have to do some rezoning, but I think it would really work well for those people that need the housing, and then those people also to do for the business.
Okay, John, and then Aaron.
2 points. One, I know if you go out to Park City, Utah, or go to Vail, or go to any of those places that have resorts and do tourism, the people that operate those places actually build apartments and provide the houses for their workers. They have a winter season, they have a summer season. And I think we have to look at that model to meet the needs. When you look at what the wage that they're paying, then the people industry paying those wages have to be a party to providing the housing for their workers. And out west, that is very, very common. that the industry itself provides that housing. My other observation, I want to make sure, because people, I'm sure, are going to get some calls when they see that top line, single family to multifamily. If I read that right, they were talking about rezoning single family neighborhoods to multifamily. There's high objection to that. And I think as soon as you say that, you have to say where, because otherwise it doesn't have any meaning. And I have not seen the appetite for that in Virginia Beach. That's just my observation. So when you say that, you better be prepared, or the study people have got to be saying, because people are going to be asking, well, who is that neighborhood? And then other goodness that you might accomplish will get consumed in that. So if that's not that may not be the first place you want to step off. You might want to find other things that deliver shorter term before you, because you may short circuit all your other initiatives. That's just an observation.
Hey, Aaron.
Thank you. Just looking at the presentation, thank you for your presentation, by the way. Something that's just jumped off at me is we allocated a lot of funds, through, with ARPA and housing and a lot of other organizations that divvied out the money because housing was a huge issue throughout the pandemic. But that was short term. And so my concern is eviction rates. That's probably going to go back up because of wages have stagnated, or the loss of income for families, financial insecurities as well. And so my comment is really based on, for council, I like what Barbara brought up when we had that infield development kind of meeting. But we were making a lot of progress with the industry. But I think it's important for city council to get in that driver's seat because when we were walking hand in hand with the industry, we can kind of make sure we can put in policies and dictate what areas that we can make sure these are affordable and not niche rate or not market rate housing, but this could be an affordable housing if we just let the industry do what they do. They're going to do what they do best, and they're going to put housing in that typically is going to be market rate or higher. And so I like to get that committee or that Barbara and I were working on started back again. And I really think again we have to be council should dictate to the industry exactly where we're looking for housing stock, so to speak, but working in with a partnership with them. I think that's really, really important. And so when we do get these developments in front of us, we're not like, okay, where's the affordability part of it? It's like, well, we have maybe 10 units, out of 400 or 300. And so I think that's really, really important in this grand scheme of conversation. And then the last thing, and this is going to take tons of community engagement. I'm sure Tampa has done that and they figured out to be on one accord when they have community engagements. But this not in my backyard attitude that typically leads to or stems from other concerns, not just from housing, but other concerns from racial past histories on down the line. And I think that's going to be so important to have a communications effort where you are engaging on a level playing field, so to speak, and one that is centered at looking at providing housing, not just for those who are at low income, but for our seniors and those who are working 2 or 3 jobs just to maintain a house that they have already. I think that's the group that gets overlooked a lot of times is those people who are working, and yet over 30%, more than 50% of their paycheck are going towards rent. And if they get sick or maybe call out or God forbid another pandemic happens, they're out of work. Now they are asking for that short-term relief. And so communication is huge. City councils should start driving these conversations, be in the driver's seat going forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Yeah, Sabrina.
I just want to say real briefly, good afternoon to you. Real briefly, which was already mentioned by Council Member Miles. I'm all for a study to see and go over what we know, what we already know. Sure, go ahead and do another study. But I think we already know some of the things we need to do. And so as we're waiting to move forward with the study, I'd like to see, as was mentioned, to work on those areas that we already know in tandem, moving forward with the community engagement piece and moving forward instead of being stagnant, waiting for another study, which we already know what to do. We already know it's out there, but another study, okay. But just want to move forward. And so do the study or wait for that approval and then move forward and doing the things we know so that we can progress instead of be stagnant. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Sabrina.
So just to get some clarity. So the general sense I'm getting from council is that it's okay to proceed, but to Mr. Moss's point, we should include industry on the front end of the scope development. Mrs. Henley mentioned, see if the study can look into infill of do an infill development around shopping centers, but see if we can also go ahead and start to activate that group again as well. Work on, everybody seemed to say we need to work on a VB specific definition through community engagement on what this means for Virginia Beach. And with those caveats, and there's obviously some minor details that I'll follow back up on as I review this meeting, with those caveats, it's okay to proceed with engaging with the update of the information and possible recommendations to bring back to council.
Yeah, I think, that would be, spot on in terms of, moving, and in light of what Sabrina said, the Kemps River Shopping Center, I think is, kind of primed to at least, move on immediately. But, once again, this was one where the Kmart went out of business right around the time of the Farm Fresh and the Rite Aid left. And I think what would make this desirable, especially if we did a mixed use with, affordable housing in there. This place is only a mile from the only interchange that we have on I-64. And so I think it would lend itself, and a lot of people want to live in contained communities. So if you have a combination of housing and, restaurants, shops, and maybe, some office space and, things of that nature, it sets a template for, a lot of the other things, because with the disruptive technologies that are out there, more and more people are ordering online. And, it's, even the malls are having trouble sustaining right now. MacArthur Mall down and thing, but even, people aren't going to malls like they used to. But once again, you can really think, but if I could bring up 2 quick points. First of all, get rid of some of the stigmas, the stigmas on Section 8 housing, and also the stigmas on what is workforce housing. I think there's some misperceptions, on both that, that really have to get addressed in a big way. Years ago, when I first got elected around 2005, Rosemary and I were involved with Empower Hampton Roads, and we actually went up to McLean and and saw what they did, and they were doing retrofitting McMansions up there. Some of these really big homes that they're not able to sell, they were able to subdivide it into 4 units. And the thing about, quote, workforce housing, instead of teak cabinets, you get something else instead of, marble for mica. It's really desirable housing, but, at far less, a cost. So, there's other ways that, kind of look at things out of the box. That place they opened up, where is it, Mediterranean, is it? With Lawson and everything, and, what we're doing. But once again, and the other thing is, from what I understand, the governor and some other folks are looking at the tiny home industry. But once again, the problem we have is the land to do that. But there are things that we can move proactively right now, Barbara, and then Rosemary.
I've got that file. Can we just reinstitute that work that we had begun and take off from there?
Yeah, let's do
Okay,
that.
all right.
And also, a lot of these shopping centers are right on the bus lines.
Yep.
So that people can get back and forth to work. And some of you may not know this, but source of funds for paying for your housing, whether it's Section 8 for rental, or even when you're purchasing a home, there's a lot of sellers who don't want to take a VA mortgage. And that is a violation of fair housing. So if it comes up that someone is denied a contract or a lease because of source of funds, they are in violation of fair housing.
Yeah. Okay, Michael?
Mayor, thank you. I think we all recognize that workforce and affordable housing is a top priority for this council. We're told by folks who live here that it's a top priority for Virginia Beach families. There's no doubt about it. And I think what we heard today, I just want to make sure that we're all clear about emphasizing this. And I remember the conversations we had about the infill discussions. And we made a lot of good progress. But also there was a sense that key participants in the discussion were not engaged fully. And I think that's what we need to make sure that we prioritize in all aspects of this is transparency and engagement. You know, when we talk about, to Mr. Moss's point, moving from single use to higher density or mixed use or to single family to multifamily, that may be appropriate in some cases, but we need to be on the front end engaging all members of the community who want to be engaged to make sure that we're doing that in a way that works for our community. And also that we're engaging industry leaders in the same fashion so that we're not creating a one-size-fits-all kind of engagement plan that doesn't fit all. And I think that's the balance we need to strike. And if we do it on the front end, we'll be much better than having to sort of review these multifamily or mixed use plans one by one as they come up. But we've been missing, I'm not gonna beat around the bush. We have been missing those ingredients. And I'm not trying to be critical because I know that it's difficult to achieve, but we need to do a better job of making sure that we get all those people to the table so that we can set expectations. It's much easier to respond, for example, to a neighborhood, any neighborhood, when we say, well, we searched this, we looked at this, we studied this, this is part of our strategic plan for where the mixed use is appropriate and makes sense, and therefore it's in line with we can't go and tell them this is a great idea that just came up and you've never heard of this before. So we need to do a lot of work on the front end to make sure we're prepared when these opportunities come up. And I think we've missed the mark on that. At least that's what I've seen since I've been here.
Okay, thank you.
Could I just add to Michael's point, which I agree with wholeheartedly, these discussions we've had, and Miles, we worked on some things and that has worked for us. But we are going to be tempering our ambitions and expectations with the cost of capital is going to be phenomenal in the next 36 months. When you talk about actionable, what you can do, and you look at the Fed chairman's role, the cost of capital is going to be a huge constraint on expectations. And I think we need to think about what are the quick wins in the context of the fiscal environment, because the next 24 months for certain is not a very favorable environment for borrowing under any circumstance. So I think we need to be thinking what we're going to do near term versus what we're going to lay the foundation, because that won't last forever. But that gets back to the point we can use this, I'll call it fiscal strategic pause, to be doing the education so that you're ready when the capital markets are more favorable. You're not doing the homework, you've already done it. I just wanted to piggyback on Michael's comments.
Good, Aaron.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Also, I just have a question for Mark, since we're on the topic of affordable housing. There are a lot of communities and residents in the District 10, new District 10 kind of area, a lot of HOAs. And so that while the housing stock may be affordable, the HOAs are, and I've talked to many of them, are raising fees astronomically that are pushing people out their homes. And so is there anything in our repertoire that we can kind of limit that or look at that? I've talked to many residents that they're leaving because the rent, it isn't the rent, it's the HOA fees are now going out the roof. going through the roof.
I'm not aware of anything as I sit here that we can do, but I can certainly look into it.
That's another, issue as well is the condos, they've been living in these homes for 20 some years or more. They're in these houses, the rents are stable, they can afford the rent because they're on a fixed income. Then the HOAs jack them up and then they can't no longer afford to live there anymore. So I think that's something we also should.
Okay, I think we had some very great ideas here, so if we can move forward with emphasis, a high priority. Linwood, what do you think about seeing if the process improvement folks might be willing to take a look at this and, come up with some stuff?
We got it.
Okay. All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Good afternoon.
Thank you.
All right, moving along.
I haven't forgotten.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, at this time, our planning department will give you a briefing on the upcoming pending planning items for you all to consider at your future council meetings.
City manager reference.
I think so.
107. Nationwide, we're 4 million households short. They're just not surpluses in the east, shortfalls in the south.
Good to
Before you start, just want to say, I was saddened to read that you're gonna have the nerve to retire. But you certainly have been a wonderful asset to city staff, to the city, to this community. You're gonna be missed. There's no replacing you. So I was sorry to see that, but certainly I wish you well in the next chapter. But that's a lot of institutional knowledge sitting in those stilettos.
I certainly second that.
Don't we all?
As my husband reminds me, Charles de Gaulle says there's graveyards full of indispensable men. So
He
retired many years before me, so he's kind of been pushing me to do That's very kind. So, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Bobby, Tahan, and I are here to give you a quick overview of the planning items scheduled for October 18th. And due to advertising requirements and how the calendar fell, we were only able to schedule applications for you for one meeting in October. So you might get a bit of a reprieve.
Okay, I'm sad about that.
There are 12 planning items scheduled for the 18th, including item number 9, which was deferred by the City Council at your September 20th meeting. Items 1 and 2 are proposals for a conditional rezoning of almost 11 acres on 2 parcels of agriculturally zoned property, 2 conditional O1 office districts, and also a conditional use permit in order to develop the site for housing for seniors and disabled persons. Specifically, they are proposing.
Move the mic down, they can't.
Our technical director came
out. Mayor's job is
give an IT badge.
He came out of nowhere.
So it's a conditional rezoning.
Hey, believe me, I get lectured. I was clicking my pen one day and the mic picked it up. So it's, thank you.
And it's also a conditional use permit in order to develop the property with senior housing and housing for disabled persons. And specifically, it's an 88-bed facility for assisted living and memory care. To better orient you, this property is north of the Municipal Center, and it's across from the Virginia National Golf Course along Princess Anne Road. The site is within the Southern Rivers watershed, and the applicant did submit a preliminary stormwater management strategy, and staff has reviewed that and has determined that it has the ability to comply with our stormwater regulations. The site is within the 65 to 70 noise zone, and as a housing project per se is proposed, the joint review process group met to discuss the proposal. That is the JRP, and they are a group of staff from both the Navy and City.
The JRP determined that the proposal is in line with the recommendations of the comprehensive plan, and it is consistent with residential development in the vicinity. Approximately 5 acres of the property are jurisdictional non-tidal wetlands, and very little, if any, impact is proposed for those sensitive areas. Development in the O1 office district does have a cap of 25% lot coverage. Their plan shows up to 29% of lot coverage, so they will be seeking a deviation during this process. One point of vehicular ingress-egress is proposed along Princess Anne Road. While staff did not receive any letters of opposition, the property owner to the north submitted a letter and noted that this site, as well as others in the vicinity, should use a shared ingress-egress along this portion of the limited access Princess Anne Road, which is on his property and also identified on the master transportation plan. So there is a recommended condition that in the event the city does create the road across from Tournament Drive, which is that entrance into the Virginia Beach National Golf Course, that access that's shown on the bottom of the screen would be abandoned, and then they would join in with that shared access as designed with the master transportation plan. The 88-bed facility is proposed as a one-story structure with both indoor and outdoor amenities for its residents. The applicant appeared before the Senior Housing Advisory Committee and provided details to that group of their proposal, and there were no objections noted. Both the number of parking spaces and the amount of plantings proposed are above our minimum standards. The Planning Commission had one speaker sign up virtually to discuss the proposal. However, due to technical difficulties, we could not hear from her. The applicant's representative did reach out to her, and he believes that he has addressed her questions, which were primarily related to screening and buffering adjacent to her property to the north. The Planning Commission did vote 10-0 to recommend approval.
If I could.
Barbara.
I think you were talking about the noise zone and the issues there, but I don't see that here in writing. But this is across the road from the ITA, but maybe the ITA is a little bit farther down. So you are in compliance with the Navy requirements, and there's not an issue with noise?
Correct. That is absolutely correct. We have reviewed that with the Navy staff and had a meeting where the applicant came and actually gave a presentation on their proposal, and then we reviewed it against the guidance that's in the comprehensive plan and determined that this project was satisfactory.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So item 3 is a request for a conditional use permit for a car wash to redevelop a parcel that was formerly a fast food restaurant in the Fairfield Shopping Center that's along Kempsville Road. The existing restaurant building will be demolished and replaced with an approximately 4,000 square foot single tunnel automated car wash building with 13 vacuum stations. The vacuum parking spaces will be situated against the shopping center parking lot, and that's in an effort to reduce visibility and noise to the residential properties that are across Kempsville Road. Adjacent residentially zoned properties will be buffered by an expansive open space area thanks to an existing large property owned by a church who has been operating on that site for a number of years. As this site was built in 1978, it currently is not up to standards in terms of our planting guidelines for screening and buffering. So the applicant has provided a landscape plan, and they will be installing plant material to bring this site into compliance with our current standards. And I think we all believe that will make this a much more attractive property.
Could I just ask, what is the restaurant that's demolished? Parties. Since this is all paved today, and the redevelopment, they have to deal with 20% of the runoff, even though it's all impervious, if I remember correctly. I think that's right. There's some requirement of the runoff they have to deal with.
Yes, sir, Mr. Moss, that is correct. They can either do Yes, sir, Mr. Moss.
We can do that either in a reduction in impervious cover or through stormwater management to reduce it by 20%.
So here they're doing it by reducing the impervious cover, I take it.
They don't have to provide their stormwater strategy at this point, but it looks like that's what they're doing.
I just want to point out to people, as we do these redevelopments, we are gaining improvement in our stormwater management. That's what I just really wanted to point out. Thank you very much, Mr. Tom.
It's a very good point. We want to get that recapture where we can, where we don't have it now. The proposed use will likely generate lower traffic numbers than a typical by right commercial use, perhaps a fast food restaurant. And the proposed building elevations do depict a contemporary style building with a height of 31 feet at the tallest point. There is no known opposition to this application, and this was on the Planning Commission's consent agenda. For item 4, the applicant is requesting to modify the conditions of a conditional use permit for an auto repair garage on the parcel that's along Holland Road across the street from the Chimney Hill Shopping Center. Currently, the site does operate as a motor vehicle rental business. However, the applicant would like to now go back to the automobile garage. So in order to do that, they need to modify their conditions. The repair service offered to customers will be limited to quick oil changes. All work will occur inside the building. No painting or any body work is proposed. Upgrades to the site include additional plantings along the street and then trees and shrubs along the northern property line. There's existing vegetation that's off-site, but it's in an unimproved right-of-way north of the property, and it's really served over the years as a great buffer to this site and other sites for the townhouse community that's to the north. And we expect that to remain at least over the medium term. We have no plans to make any changes there. The existing 2,800 square foot building will remain on the site. No significant structural changes are anticipated. Improvements they are proposing include painting and also upgrades to their signage. There's no known opposition, and this was also a consent agenda item for the Planning Commission. Items 5 and 6 are applications for conditional use permits for a car wash and an auto repair garage on a 1.44 acre parcel that's very close to the northeast intersection of General Booth Boulevard and Dam Neck Road. This parcel will be divided into 2 separate businesses by lease lines, a Take 5 oil change operation and also a Splash H2O car wash. This property is located in the greater than 75 noise zone, which is our highest ACUS. So non-residential auto-related uses such as this are compatible in that ACUS as noted in our zoning ordinance. A shared ingress-egress exists with the parcel to the south, and additional vehicular connections are proposed along the feeder road that will help facilitate vehicular flow through the site. This property is also one that's in the Southern Rivers watershed, and they have submitted a stormwater management strategy, and staff does believe that it has the ability to comply with our stormwater standards. General Booth Boulevard can easily accommodate the additional traffic that will be generated by these uses, and it's likely that these uses will generate less traffic than a typical commercial property might. Specifically, there's a convenience store with fuel sales to the south, which generates quite a bit of average daily trips, and then the restaurant to the north, which is likely a higher traffic generator. These buildings are designed with complementary materials to surrounding buildings. The single tunnel car wash is shown on the left and is proposed with a corner tower feature. And then the single-story oil change building on the right depicts 3 drive-through bays with entrances on the back of the building. The Planning Commission voted unanimously to recommend approval, and there is no known opposition. And this was also on the Planning Commission's consent agenda. And it wouldn't be a public hearing without a tattoo parlor request. So this is your one for the 18th. It's a use permit to operate a traditional tattoo parlor within 3 suites of the Providence Square Shopping Center. The business will occupy just about 2,000 square feet with 6 artists using those spaces. A similar request was approved for a beauty salon within the shopping center. However, that was specifically for the application of permanent makeup. There's plenty of parking on the site. We don't expect any negative impacts with this tattoo business being on this property. There's no known opposition, and this was also a consent agenda item for the Planning Commission. One more month, 32 days. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Hey, Bobby.
Mr. Mayor, unfortunately, Carolyn has been counting down. And during our one-on-one meeting, she said, "Oh, it's 35 days." And I then shrugged and put my head down on my desk. So as Ms. Henley noted, there's a lot of institutional knowledge and a lot of information that Carolyn has provided and guidance to the department throughout her years and her many roles that she's had. Item number 8 is a request for a subdivision variance for a property that was created by deed rather than by plat as required in 1957. There is an existing dwelling on the property that was constructed in 1930, and the lot is within the resource protection area and received a variance from the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Area Board in 2017 for a proposed development and encroachment into the resource protection area on the property. The parcel adjacent to this also received approval for a subdivision variance in 2013 for a similar request.
This is actually at the end of a private road that cuts off of Richardson Road. You see that road that comes down across those properties?
Yes,
That's
sir.
a private road that comes off of Richardson. I've been down there many times. Been on that lot.
Yes, sir. So again, the property is developed currently with a single-family home, again constructed in the 1930s. And at the time, this parcel was recorded by deed rather than by plat. That was required by the Code of Virginia at the time in 1957. So this subdivision variance is to correct that oversight and to grant a variance to the lot width on a public road and the street line frontage as required. The existing dwelling is slated for removal and will be replaced by another, but much larger single-family dwelling again that was approved by the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Area Board. There was no known opposition, and this was on the Planning Commission's consent agenda. The next item was continued from the September 20th City Council hearing so that the applicant could meet with the Agricultural Advisory Commission to update them on their proposal that they have, as noted by Ms. Henley, which was significantly reduced from their initial larger scale proposal that they had. They do plan on meeting with the Agricultural Advisory Commission in October. And again, this is for an assembly use to create a wedding venue on the proposed location.
Hey, Barbara.
Just to make some comments about this, because it just occurred to me when you look at this, and as you see on the slide 22, that the Agricultural Advisory Committee and the Transition Area ITA both were supportive of the request, but unfortunately, this was presented to those bodies as one part of a long-range plan, and they saw the entire site presented to them in a long-range plan. But what's before us is only 3 acres, and in the document that you got, there was no mention of a long-range plan. And I think these groups need to see exactly what you are seeing, and whether or not they still are supportive, because it just seemed to me that it was a lot different from what had been presented. I think it was an error, probably, to be presenting something that was really not before us at this point. And I think from my background, I seem to know that it's only what we are seeing and what is in council's action that has any future enforceability. And so the fact that the rest of the parcel is not in play at this time, I think is extremely significant. And you weren't seeing that, and that's not affected now. So these bodies need to see exactly what you are seeing if you're going to look at this and say, well, they thought they were supportive. So it was my feeling that they really needed to see only what is before us at this time and only what will be being considered.
Yes, ma'am.
And I hope that that was the right take that I had. But when I looked at our agenda package and said, whoops, this doesn't begin to be what was presented to those bodies, it gave me concern. And I know it wasn't what the applicant wanted to hear, but I just really think that, you know, this is only 3 acres. It has nothing to do with the rest of the parcel. And that's important.
Moving on to the portion of the short-term rentals, we have 3 short-term rentals that are moving forward. The first one is at 4005 Atlantic Avenue, Unit 207. This is an existing 1-bedroom unit that is requesting a short-term rental. They do have the required 1 parking space. This was on the Planning Commission's consent agenda. However, there was 1 letter of opposition that was submitted that stated there was opposition due to safety and use of STRs within the existing building. Item number 11 is another short-term rental for a conditional use permit for short-term rental in a 2-bedroom unit within the existing Dolphin Run condominium. Each unit in Dolphin Run has a 1 parking space that is granted to them, and they have a number of guest spaces. And as per the zoning ordinance, there is an allowance for historically operating units such as this to have a parking exemptions due to how they have previously operated. Again, this was on the consent agenda for the Planning Commission, and there is no known opposition to this request. Item number 12 is at 304 26.5 Street, Unit B, for a short-term rental in a 4-bedroom unit in one side of an existing duplex. The duplex was constructed in 2010, and again, it's a 4-bedroom duplex. As per the ordinance, only 1 space can count that is located within the garage. Although there is a driveway apron that is in front of the garage, it does not meet our minimum dimensional standards for parking to be allowed and to be counted. So the applicant is proposing to lease 3 spaces from the 25th Street garage, which is down the street from this location. This was on the Planning Commission consent agenda, and there is no known opposition to this request. Thank you.
That's it?
Yes, sir.
All right, at this point, any council discussions or initiatives? Yeah, John, and then Barbara.
I want to remind the viewing audience and people around the table that 30 September, that's coming up, is the closing date for the comments on the noise ordinance draft before we schedule at a later date the public hearing, 30 September, so don't be bashful. Share your thoughts. And I also want to compliment the staff, Mr. Haney, helping Bill Sue and I met with the folks relative to the disposal site, you know, right there at the Lynn Haven boat ramp there on the east side of the bridge. And we've come to a community consensus through our engagement with the neighborhood, and we are ready to bring that forward with everyone slapping the table by moment. So thanks to Delcino and the staff. So that's it, sir.
Thank you, Barbara.
I have sort of a liaison report. I think we can do that, but something that I want to talk about when we're making appointments, but this I think needs to be open. I'm liaison to both the Green Ribbon Committee and the Open Space Committee. And of course, with the Open Space Program, we have sort of renewed it, or we did renew it, or reinvigorate it, or restart it with the budget this year by allocating the funding again to be able to begin acquisitions again. And also with the intent that this time around, not only will the open space be looked at for its recreational benefit, but also for the flooding benefit. And so the Green Ribbon Committee, since they are dealing with the waterways and water quality and so forth, feels that there needs to be a close association between the Green Ribbon Committee and the Open Space Committee. And so what I am asking, there is no limit, I believe, to membership on the Green Ribbon Committee. So in looking at these talent bank applications, one of the proposed people really seems to be just the right person to put on the Green Ribbon Committee and liaison with the Open Space Committee, so that these two committees can really work together. So that's what I'm going to propose when we're making appointments. I think the opportunities, and we did have a very good meeting yesterday at the Open Space Committee, just to remember that the Open Space Program was begun in 2001. And at that time, we raised the meal tax 1 cent. We were looking at the major, I think we called the major projects at that budget year. And of that 1 penny that we raised the meal tax that year, 0.56% went to the major projects, and 0.44% of that 1 penny went to establishing and funding the open space program. And that's what funded the $50 million open space program that we worked with up until it reached that limit. And then we've sort of kind of haven't gone forward with more purchases. But it's important now that we are going to get back to being able to making purchases that, everyone understands that it's funded with this portion of the meal tax. And 2001 was the last time that we raised the meal tax. And we're still the lowest in the region on our meal tax. But I think folks, from what I've heard from the restaurateurs, is they kind of like knowing that that meal tax is going to buy some open space. And so I really hope going forward that this is going to be another vibrant program. We had a very good presenter yesterday, Brian Van Erden from the Nature Conservancy, whom we worked with on our trees project with Virginia Tech, made the point that, we can leverage our money with a lot of partners. And there is money available out there. So I'm really looking forward to being able to fill in the gaps with some of our areas that can use some open space to be green infrastructure. And I think it's going to be a great program that you're going to see coming forward. And I think both of these two committees kind of liaison with this liaison to be able to work together more are going to bring you a lot of good recommendations. So I'm kind of excited about getting this program going again and looking forward to some more good things. But if you look at that list of properties that over the years we acquired for open space, some of them very large, like Pleasure House Point and Stumpy Lake, and some of them pretty small, just a couple of acres. But if we had not had the open space program and they had developed, things would have been a whole lot different. And I think going forward, we're going to see some more exciting opportunities.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, Dulcino and then Linwood.
Just real quickly, just wanted to ask the manager, as part of the stormwater piece, I know we had a briefing last week. Is there an effort to just do some low-hanging fruit sort of activities like cleaning the drains, that sort of thing, going in the neighborhoods, letting people see activities? Because we already have the equipment, we already have the staffing to let them see that there's things going in motion. I know we focus on the high ticket dollar item things, but this is sort of, in my mind, low-hanging fruit and opportunities to deploy what we already have to do something as simple as that. I was just curious. I wanted to the public to know if that is in place.
Yep. LJ, I'll start. But I know in fiscal year 21, in this budget, City Council created funded the creation of a program for a BMP crew and also a stormwater pipe cleaning crew, whose job is to go around the community and help to clean out the ditches and clean out the pipes. I think we're on the way of getting most of our equipment, if not all of them, but LJ will give you a better update on that as well. But the crew is going and we've been able to make significant headway in hitting the ditches and the pipes. So LJ can give you an update on that.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. As part of the STAT program that we run through the Office of Performance and Accountability, we're required to give an update, and we do have all of the equipment that was authorized in the fiscal year 22 budgets. That's the vacuum trucks. We also have the crews to operate those vacuum trucks, and we have the BMP staff that are out doing additional work. One of the things that we've been very focused on the flood protection program and making sure that that information has been accurately communicated to the public. One of the things that we're working on with media and communications is also the maintenance part of it. We haven't advanced as far on that part of the communications plan, but it is part of our communications plan, and you should be looking for that to be coming up relatively soon.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to pass around an ordinance, and hopefully it'll be put on a future agenda. It's for amphitheater repairs to the roof and other parts of the amphitheater. And staff has drawn this up, identified sources of funding, and if anyone has any questions, I'm sure city manager or
Make it way around.
anyone else would be able to answer them. But
Okay, anybody else? I just got two quick things. Last Thursday, Barbara Henley and I went to a street dedication from the Virginia Beach Police Foundation. There were two officers that gave the ultimate sacrifice back in 1979 in a helicopter accident at Rudy Inlet trying to save somebody. Jimmy Mobley and Bill Black, and it was a very, very nice ceremony, and it was a new neighborhood right off West Neck Road, and very touching. The other thing is, last Thursday we had a meeting with the mayors and the city managers on the regional youth violence initiative that we're working on, and things are progressing. They're trying to get a dashboard going, but all the cities got different types of accounting and data and everything. They're trying to merge that, but they're going to do that. A couple of initiatives that we're bringing forward to the General Assembly, in terms of the legislative package through the Hampton Roads Planning Commission, where we're having our meetings, is number one for mandatory, if schools have a mandatory conflict resolution and de-escalation classes. We're also looking for, an exemption for retired police officers from VRS, that, the police departments can go back and hire them, without jeopardizing their, status. And the other one, a big problem that was coming up and with mental health intervention was the fact that, when somebody is taken into custody but not arrested, that requires mental health services, if they can't find a bed for them locally, they have to be transported to a facility, and the police officer has to be with them for 24/7. And, I think it was Isle of Wight had to send one, such case kind of 7 hours away, and, the police officer was out of commission for 7 days. So they're looking, to, make that so a surrogate might be able to do, or maybe one of these retired police officers could do it. And there was also an initiative to use more technology for crime intervention and things of that nature. The mayors are engaged, and the city managers. Patrick, do you want to mention anything about what the CMs are doing?
No, it was a productive meeting, and basically we went over a bunch of different initiatives that the different localities are doing. We mentioned what we briefed council on through the mayor's youth violence task force on some of the updates and the programs we were doing that. We mentioned that to the regional CAOs and the mayors, and everybody seemed to be upbeat and supportive of what we're doing. So it was a productive.
And I know there's going to be more community engagement, and I believe the police chiefs are going to start getting involved. But let you know we're together, we're proactive, we're unified, and we're doing our best to address a very, very difficult situation head on. Alrighty, so at this point, Chair will entertain a motion to recess into a closed session pursuant to the exemptions from the open meeting allowed by Section 2.2 3711A Code of Virginia, as amended for the following purposes: prospective businesses or industry, discussions concerning the prospective business or industry or expansion of existing business or industry where no previous announcements have been made of the business and industry's interest in locating or expanding its facilities in the community pursuant to Section 2.2 3711A5, and that's Project Fox. Public contract, discussion of the award of public contract involving the expenditure of public funds, discussions for terms of such contract with discussion in open session would adversely affect the bargaining position or the negotiating strategy of the public body pursuant to Section 2.2 3711A29, and that would be the SAM project and 31st Street parking. Legal matters consultation with legal counsel employed or retained by the public body regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel pursuant to Section 2.2 3711A18, and that would be the ICRB. And then personnel matters, discussions, consideration, or interviews of prospective candidates for employment, assignment, appointment, promotion, performance, demotion, salaries, disciplining, or resignation of specific public officers, appointees, or employees of the public body pursuant to Section 2.2 3711A1, and that would be council appointments, council boards, commissions, committees, authorities, agencies, and appointees. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Second.
Okay.
Councilmember Lucci.
Aye.
Councilmember Brandt.
Aye.
Councilmember Henley.
Aye.
Councilmember Holcomb.
Aye.
Councilmember Miles.
Aye.
Councilmember Moss.
Aye.
Councilmember Rouse.
Aye.
Councilmember Howard.
Aye.
Councilmember Wooten.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Wilson.
Aye.
Mayor Dyer.
Aye. What do you think, folks? Short break? Okay, do I have a motion to certify the closed session?
So moved.
Okay, roll call, please.
Councilmember Lucci.
Aye.
Councilmember Brandt.
Yes, aye.
Henley.
Aye.
Councilmember Holcomb.
Aye.
Councilmember Miles.
Aye.
Councilmember Moss.
Aye.
Councilmember Rouse.
Aye.
Councilmember Howard.
Aye.
Councilmember Wooten.
Aye.
Aye. Mayor Dyer.
Aye.
11-0, the third party closed.
All right.
We are adjourned at